The fourth school of thought is the futurist view. Essentially, within this view, everything from chapter 4 on refers to events that have not yet happened and that will take place shortly before the second coming. Essentially, the idea is it's a roadmap to the end times, the things that will happen as we get closer and closer to Jesus' return. The futurists also argue that the symbols that were used in Revelation were used to make it understandable to those first century Christians. So, for example, John sees a flaming mountain because he doesn't understand what a nuclear warhead is. He sees a locust with a human head wearing a crown because he doesn't understand or have the words to talk about military helicopters and pilots. And so the futurist says, right, these are the ways John sees the end times, but he only has certain words to be able to put them into usage. Now, of course, there are a lot of differences between futurists about what will happen, when it will happen, how certain images are to be interpreted. It's like, what does this specifically refer to? Is this going to happen? Are these events going to happen first, and then there's going to be this other event? Right? So there's a lot of differences over futurists. Futurists also tend to interpret Revelation kind of based on the newspaper. And so you'll hear a lot of people who believe Revelation is future things saying, oh, there's conflict in the Middle East, and this is the beginning stages of Armageddon. And so it's a very present tense view, right? That there's kind of, the times we are living in are the end times. Usually not somebody saying it's 1,000 years from now. The people that talk about the future says, we're on the doorstep. Futurists often take a more literal approach to Revelation, right? Even though there's this symbolic approach, right? It says locust, it means helicopters. The future still tends to be more literalist. There will actually be earthquakes and plagues and other things talked about in Revelation. These aren't just symbols of other things, right? And so the preterist might say, okay, it says flaming mountain, but it means political upheaval. Right? It says the sun will be dark and the moon turn to blood, and it means great things are taking place. The futurists would say, no, there's going to be this great earthquake. People are actually going to be plagued. There are going to be actually armies marching through different places. Now, of course, you kind of have to, you still have to, if you're a futurist, you still have to take it as symbolic, right? Because you're still saying, okay, it's symbolic, even though you're trying to take a literal approach to some things. But one of the questions that becomes problematic for the futurist with Revelation is, what would have been the relevance to the original hearers? To those first century Christians, what would be that relevance? And so futurists have to answer that question. Right? So for the preterists, the question is, okay, what's it mean for us today? For the futurists, it's what did it mean back then? Right? And so both, all four of these groups have some problems to try and say, okay, how does this deal with some other issues with Revelation? So we have four rather distinct, different views. Which one's the right one? Well, one of the things that I kind of use in thinking about Revelation is I read and heard a professor from Oklahoma Christian named Stafford North, and he presents it in this way, and so I'm kind of using his ideas. He refers to 7 keys to unlock Revelation. Not surprising, there's 7 of them, right? And by thinking about these keys to understanding Revelation and trying as much as we can to let Revelation talk to us instead of imposing our beliefs on Revelation, we have to, that may help us better understand. One of the first keys, of course, is a recognition here that everybody has. Revelation is written in symbols. A good example of this is to look at Revelation chapter 16, verse 13. In Revelation chapter 16, verse 13, the dragon opens his mouth, and out of his mouth come 3 spirits like frogs, and these frogs go and speak to the kings of the earth. All right, so a dragon, spitting out frogs that go talk to kings. Is it possible there's something figurative in all of that? Well, yeah, right? Nearly everybody would say, yeah, that's symbolic in some way. Right? And so we have to be careful how far we push the symbols so we don't try to, well, this is literal and that's symbolic, right? You've got to be careful of that. And sometimes people can get mixed up with some of that and find themselves trying to make some things symbolic that might be literal, or making something literal that might be symbolic. A second thing that has to be considered is that it is written, the document is written, to comfort a specific audience and to provide warning to a specific audience. Revelation was not written to us in our time period. It was written to them. And so it has to be understood by them first before it can make sense to us. Now, by itself, that statement doesn't necessarily rule any of these views out, but it does say, unless we can make that interpretation make sense to them, then we might want to consider that that might not be the right approach. A third thing that we have to take into account are four phrases, actually two phrases that appear a total of 4 times. Revelation, the events of Revelation, are twice said to be soon to take place. Chapter 1, verse 1, and chapter 22, 6 and 7. Right? So at the beginning and the end, John says these things are soon to take place. Also 2 times, one in the beginning, one in the end, the time is near. Chapter 1, verse 3, chapter 22, verse 10. Right? So interpretation of Revelation has to take into consideration, it has to explain what that means. And so for the preterists, they would say, okay, well, it means, the things are going to take place. The futurist has to draw from 2 Peter chapter 3 and say a day with the Lord is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day, right? And so God may say soon, but doesn't mean soon like we think soon, right? So, but any interpretation of Revelation has to address what does soon to take place mean. Other things to think about with Revelation have to do with some main characters. Some people, or some beasts and some beings that appear, especially in the second part of the work, that we have to understand within that context. Now, one of those characters is the dragon. The dragon appears beginning in chapter 12 and appears frequently throughout the latter part of the book. The dragon is perhaps one of the clearest symbols out of these characters as to who it is, because it says the dragon is Satan. Right? Revelation chapter 12, verse 9, Revelation 20 and verse 2. Right? Says dragon, it means Satan. Right? So anytime the dragon appears, it means Satan. Right? And so again, not something where the 4 groups are going to differ on. It says Satan. But Satan gives power to 2 beasts, known as the first beast and the second beast. So the first beast shows up in chapter 13. It has 7 heads and 10 horns. It has a body like a leopard, mouth like a lion, and paws like a bear. Again, we'll come back to all this as we get to chapter 13. What appears to be the reference for this is Daniel's vision in Daniel chapter 7, where Daniel sees 4 beasts. One is a leopard, one is a lion, and one is a bear. And then there is a 4th beast that Daniel sees that he's really not able to describe. But what appears to be going on in chapter 13 is John is kind of drawing off of Daniel chapter 7 in describing this beast. The first beast, blasphemes God, makes war on the saints, and reigns over every tribe, people, and language. And the inhabitants of the earth worship the beast. But the beast also seems to be connected to that beast that we talked about in chapter 17. Right? When we talked about the 7 heads of the 7 kings, right? The heads represent kings. 5 are past, 1 is, and 1 is to come. So it appears that John is saying first beast, but he is talking about a worldwide power, or a major political power. But what also seems to be the case is, or one of the things that we have to address, is those heads. 5 of those have fallen. 5 of them are past, and 1 is. So it seems that whatever the first beast represents, it is in existence at the time of John, and when John is seeing these things. The second beast also appears in chapter 13. The second beast has 2 horns like a lamb, but speaks like a dragon. Now, who's the dragon again? All right, so he looks like a lamb, but he talks like the dragon, right? So Satan is on his side. He exercises the authority of the first beast. So the first beast and the second beast are connected together. The second beast, who's also sometimes called the false prophet, sets up images and statues of the heads of the first beast. But the heads of the first beast represent what? Kings. And he forces people to worship these images of the heads of the first beast. And he does this through false miracles, through economic pressure, and even death. So the first beast and the second beast are connected together, appear to be in existence at the time of John, and the second beast encourages people to worship the kings, the heads of the first beast. The fourth character that is major in helping understand Revelation is the prostitute we mentioned in chapter 17. The prostitute's name is a mystery. She is referred to as Babylon the Great. And in verse 18 of chapter 17, we find out that the prostitute is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. Right? So it says prostitute, it means city. This city rides on the first beast, commits fornication with kings, wears precious materials and jewels, and is drunk with the blood of the saints. So out of these 4 characters, interpretations have to take into account who these characters are and how to explain them in such a way that fits with Revelation. Things that appear to have been in existence at the time of John, that appear to have been active in persecuting Christians, and also had something to do with the worship of rulers as deities. And so I believe, and we'll explain more as we go through, I believe that the preterist view is probably the one that's more accurate, that it is dealing with things that have taken place already, but predominantly dealing with the fall of Rome, and not with the fall of Jerusalem. We have run out of time. We'll pick up on Thursday with just a couple last things, talking about some numbers, what the numbers mean. That'll be very important as we get into it. But then also getting into chapter 1. So the quiz on Thursday is over chapter 1. Again, you don't need to have Greg already to take it. All right, so it'll just be on Revelation chapter 1, and so you should be able to take that even if you haven't gotten the Greg book in. If you didn't get the Greg book in time to take today's quiz, once you get it, have time to read it, let me know. We can reopen that quiz for you to take. Have a good day. See you on Thursday.